What's up, YouTube? This is Pluto Vision here, back with another video. In this video, I'll be discussing having Pluto in the second house of your natal chart. So whatever house you have Pluto in is the house in which you will go through the deepest transformations. Pluto represents death, which is basically just the ending of a cycle. It's a necessary step to get to the next portion of your life, so it's really a good thing. It also represents rebirth, which is the new stage after the ending of the previous cycle. It represents where you have the most regenerative power, and basically what that means is just the ability just to come back from difficult situations, difficult circumstances, bouncing back after a loss, things of that nature. It also represents power as the area of your chart where you hold the most personal power to transform. It also represents it's also where you will get into the most power struggles with other people. Um, Pluto also represents um, deep psychology, our inner psychological makeup. Typically, whatever house Pluto is in, there was typically some type of event that left a very deep mark on your psyche at a young age, and it becomes an area of your life where you tend to obsess over. Wherever you have Pluto in your chart is also an area where you will typically be very knowledgeable and know all the ins and outs of it due to the fact that you place so much psychological attention and energy towards that specific area of your life. Um, Pluto also represents shared resources. It represents intimacy, and deep intimate bonds with other individuals. Um, it also is the dark areas of life. And when I say dark, it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. It doesn't necessarily have to be crime or things of that nature, although it can be, but it's just hidden things that are not that are, I guess, more taboo. You know, the things that you don't talk about, you typically don't talk about on a day to day basis. It also represents our trauma and things that we keep to ourselves. Um, the second house of your natal chart is the house of our values. It is also where we place our self esteem in. The second house is our values, our self esteem, our resources, our possessions. And when I say possessions, it doesn't necessarily have to be material things. It can be anything that you own that also includes your own feelings. So anything that you believe is yours, that you hold closely to yourself, that's your second house. It's also your income and how you gain your income as well. So people who have Pluto in the second house typically grew up in an environment where finances were heavily emphasized. And there was an emphasis on your value being determined based off of what it is that you own, how much money you make, um, whatever you possess, just things of that nature. And you tend to place too much value on things that are not you, right? So you may have came from a background in which you grew up very poor. Your parents may have stressed about money all the time, and it just left a lasting impression on you, you know, to be able to just have things, right? So it could go both ways. So you could be someone who places so much on an emphasis on finances that all you focus on is making money, or you could end up with a bad relationship with money. So you're never able to actually hold on to money. You feel powerless, as if you can't have control over your resources, right? And this could go both ways. You could have also come from an environment where you were very wealthy or well off growing up, but it's the same. It still left the same impression on you. You constantly saw your parents or the people around you talking about money or putting so much emphasis on money. Your parents could have possibly even, constantly talk to you about how you need to make this amount of money, you need to get this, you need to get that. That could have been your upbringing, or you could have been in the middle. You could have grown up in a middle class environment, but it's the same thing. Always stressing about money, always talking about what you own. You could have had some psychological manipulation happen to you regarding your self-esteem. You may have felt as if you didn't have full control over where your self-esteem comes from. And what I mean is you may have allowed other people to dictate your self-esteem. You might have been someone who got bullied a lot growing up. That's also something that happens to people who in the second house, and that could have left a mark on your self-esteem. The things you could have gotten bullied about were possibly things that you owned. You know, you may not have had all the nice things that all the other kids had. You know, you may have, you know, had to wear hand me downs, or people could have made you feel bad because you had more resources than other people. People could have also made you feel bad because of your feelings. You may have expressed how you felt about things or the things that you value, and you basically could have gotten shitted on by other people for that. Right. So now that we have the upbringing of someone Pluto in the second house out of the way, how this tends to affect us as adults is we tend to place way too big of an emphasis on our money and our income and what we own. And we will base our self esteem off of that. So if you're, 18, 19, 20 years old, you don't really have a good job, you don't have any skills, you may feel as if you're worthless because you don't have the resources that you wish that you had. You know, because these experiences when you were young left such a deep mark on your psyche, it becomes a constant thing that's in the back of your head. Even if you're not consciously thinking about it, it's on the subconscious level, it's controlling you. So you could have this mindset of having to prove yourself to other people through what you own and how much money you make. So you'll go through life, right, trying to prove your worth to other people through what it is that you have or what you can do for them. And what's going to happen is you may gain these resources, you may gain, all the nice material possessions, you might make a lot of money and all of that, but you will still feel empty inside because you're only going to attract people to you who value you for those things. And at the end of the day, because the connection is not authentic, it'll still leave you feeling empty inside. So what tends to happen whenever you go through these well, let me back up. Even when it comes to your feelings, your emotions, you may fake it. You may fake it to make it. And what I mean by that is you might not fully express how you truly feel to other people in order to please them. And again, like I said, they're attracted to you based off of the image that you're portraying, but it's not actually real. So inside, you may be dying on the inside. However, on the outside, you're faking it as if you're someone that you're not, and you're still not getting that validation. So what tends to happen whenever you go through these phases is Pluto will destroy anything that doesn't need to be there, right? So Pluto's going to push you through circumstances in which you will be forced to see yourself for who you truly are and learn to embrace that and build and rebuild your own self-esteem through you developing a close relationship to yourself and you learning to love yourself without having all of the nice things. So what's going to happen is you might be someone that may have made it all the way to the top. You might be making 100,000, 200,000, 300K a year. You might be a multimillionaire. If you got to that point and you're still placing your value on what you own and what you make, what's going to happen is you're going to go through some type of event where those things will be stripped from you. Or you might go through a circumstance or a difficult time period where all the people around you and all the things you gained or all the statuses you might have gained somehow, some way, find a way to leave your life. So now you're stuck there with just yourself, right? You don't have access to resources anymore. You don't have all the nice things. You don't have all the friends. You don't have the status. You don't have any of that. Now you're forced to sit with yourself, right? You also may have gone down a path where you were doing something you didn't enjoy just because it would have gained you, because it would have resulted in you having money or status or anything that will make you feel better about yourself. You'll lose that as well because it's not authentic to you. See, Pluto operates through authenticity and truth. So if it's not true to you, Pluto will get rid of it. So it may feel as if you're going through through difficult times. You may feel like you're going through hell. You may feel as if your life is over because you lost everything that you built. But what's going to happen is this. See, you basically leveled the playing field. You basically gotten rid of everything, destroyed everything so you can rebuild a new, more stable foundation. Right? It's like you built a skyscraper, but you didn't focus on the foundation before you started building the skyscraper. So, okay, yeah, you built it all the way up here, but all it takes is, one blow and the entire thing comes crumbling down. Well, I guess a skyscraper wasn't really the greatest analogy. Maybe a house would be better, but you get my point. You know, it just wasn't stable and it wasn't real. So now you're able to rebuild your self esteem through the things that you truly value. Because since you lost everything that was external, it forces you to look within internally to see what your true value is, what your true worth is, and what you really care the most about, which then allows you to rebuild in a more authentic way. So you might go from, working a job where, you might be working in financing, or you might be working in the medical field, or you might be working some dead end job that just happens to pay well, but you're not truly happy. You don't really value what it is that you're doing. You're just doing it because your self esteem is tied to your status and your money. But because you don't have that anymore, now you're in a situation in which you can go down the path that you truly want to go down. And once you rebuild your self esteem and you decide what you truly value, and then you align yourself with that, you will then be put in a position where you might be making just as much money, if not more, than you were back then, but you're actually happy now. Or you might never even get back to that point where you're making that kind of money, but at the end of the day, you're happy. You're happy with yourself. Your self esteem is high. Your values are aligned with your actions, and you're living a much more fulfilling life, right? Now, when it comes to finances, right? Well, Pluto in the second house, because you tend to obsess over your resources and your finances or things of that nature, you are great when it comes to developing financial strategy and learning how to build wealth, make more money, and just things of that nature. So if you have Pluto in the second house, understand that as long as you have a good relationship with money, you will always make it back. You will always be taken care of. You know, again, Pluto's where you have the most power. So even when you're in the depths of hell, you have a tremendous, amount of force that you can use to propel yourself upward, right? Uh, and from my experience and from what I've seen, the only people with Pluto in the second house who struggle with money are people who have a bad relationship with money, in the sense that, like, they tend to think money or resources or being wealthy means that you're evil or you're bad, and in that case, again, your self-esteem and your values are misaligned. Money does not make you bad. It does not make you, the money doesn't make you. It's not you. And that's what Pluto in the second house people with Pluto in the second house have to understand. Your money and your resources are not you. It's external, right? If you have Pluto in the second house, once you build your self-esteem once you build your self-esteem, the income potential is limitless, but it has to be in alignment with your true values, right? People with Pluto in the second house also have a tendency to hold on to things. And again, this isn't just materialists; it could also be people. They may be possessive over the people in their life, and they may feel as if they have to have control over these people, right? And if they try to leave, or if they try to express their own, need for autonomy or things of the nation, they may feel threatened, and they can become they can become controlling over that person. Um, People with Pluto in the second house tend to have a very high sex drive as well, a very deep need for intimacy and closeness. People with Pluto in the second house can also get pretty violent over their resources, or over their money, or over things they feel that they possess. If you mess with their money, if you mess with their spouse, if you try to play with their feelings, anything that they hold close to themselves, things can get pretty ugly. They value those things very deeply. Um, People with Pluto in the second house also, they also tend to, kind of lost my train of thought. People with Pluto in the second house tend to hold their emotions very close to themselves. They don't like to let people in if they feel as if they can somehow take control over you through their emotions and their feelings, because they hold those feelings very closely to themselves. So if you overstep those boundaries, if an individual oversteps those boundaries with someone with Pluto in the second house, again, this can lead to power struggles. Now, also, everything that people with Pluto in the second house tend to obsess over, they attract people who also obsess over those same things or those same characteristics about the Pluto in the second house person. So if you're unevolved and you're still placing and you're still placing your value in things that are outside of yourself, you're going to continuously attract people who want to take those things from you or who want to benefit from what you own and what you possess, which will lead to power struggles. You know, this could be, a husband or a wife who is with you for your money and they're constantly trying to, find some type of way to extract money from you or resources or just anything of that nature. This could be a host of things. It could be a long list of things. But that's just an example of, what could happen. Yeah, Pluto in the second house. So overall, the key to navigating this placement is to really sit with yourself and get to the bottom of where your self-esteem issues come from and where they should actually lie. It's really getting to the point where you place value in yourself regardless of what it is that you have, and that you're not trying to buy your way into love, into fame or status, or trying to use money to cover up the big ugly wound that you're trying to hide from the world. You have to really dig deep and learn to love yourself, and Pluto's going to make sure that you do that. Because if you don't go through the transformation, Pluto's just going to keep throwing you through very destructive cycles where you're forced to face that part of yourself. So the key is just to roll with the flow, just go with the flow. When Pluto gets rid of things that don't need to be there, if you start to lose possessions or lose people, just accept that and then really reflect on how you feel, how it made you feel when you had those things around you, and how you feel now that it's gone, right? Because it's going to reveal something about yourself, and it's up to you to accept the lesson and transform, and then be rebirthed as something new. Because if you work with Pluto, you will be rewarded immensely. But if you don't, you know, you're going to suffer. A lot of billionaires have this placement, and you know regardless of what you think about billionaires or, people with high net worths, at the end of the day, although to the outside looking in, it may seem as if they're trying to hoard wealth. The reason that they're wealthy is because they figured out what they truly valued and what they truly wanted to live their life around, or what they wanted to, what their life purpose was. And they went after that. And the money was just a reflection of how high their self-esteem is and how high their self-belief is and what they truly value. If you're someone Pluto in the second house and you truly value, I don't know, let's just say it is giving back to the community or things of that nature. If that's what you truly value, you really could become a multi-millionaire through some type of philanthrope. I can't think of the word, but some type of business or venture that revolves around you giving to others, for example, or if what you truly value is your love for cars, you might go and start some type of car dealership or some type of business or some mechanic, or you might become a mechanic and open up a shop and become a multi-millionaire through that. But it's only going to be if what you're doing aligns with what you truly value. If you're doing it just for money, yeah, Pluto in the second house, it will never last. It won't. It will always be stripped away from you. So hopefully that helped. Leave a comment if you have any questions. If you enjoyed the video, comment. If you disagree with anything I said, or if you have questions, drop them in the comment section. If you have any requests for future videos, also leave that in the comment. Like, and don't forget to subscribe.